Today on the Basketball Manitoba podcast, we have Bill Wedlake, a legend in the basketball community. Bill started his basketball journey back at St. John's High School as a player, and then went on to play at the University of Manitoba. After graduating, he became head coach of the St. John's High School program from 1968 to 1984, where his team went on to win the 4A Provincial Championship in 1978. He then went on to coach for 16 years at the University of Winnipeg. He also spent 9 years as the athletic director. After retiring from the University of Winnipeg, he went on to be the executive director of the Manitoba College's Athletic Conference, a position he's held for 12 years. He was an assistant coach with the Canadian national team for 1 year. He was the CIS Men's National Coach of the Year. He was the president of the National Association of Basketball Coaches of Canada. He was the co-founder of the Winnipeg Invitational Tournament. He was also an author, writing 3 books on basketball coaching. He was a broadcaster providing color commentary on CJOB Radio, Global TV, and hosting his own show on Shaw TV. He is a Basketball Manitoba Hall of Fame member, class of 2005. Bill, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Darcy.
So that last line there, when I was reading, I was like, you know what? I should be asking you questions because now I don't know if Adam told you, but we're on Shaw. We actually are on Shaw TV. So this is going to go on Shaw TV. So this is a big circle for you because you had your own show for
yes,
for
I did.
while.
By the way, it was Videon then. It wasn't Shaw. Today's
Okay.
Shaw, but in those days it was Videon.
And they bought Shaw bought them, right?
Yeah, Shaw bought them out.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
We can talk about that.
Well, we have
on.
lots to talk about. So I want to jump right into this because I've been waiting a long time. I told obviously people who know, Adam is executive director of Basketball Manitoba, and I told him, look, when we were getting the list of guests together, I said we got to get your dad on. He said, just wait, and I said, no, we got to get him on right away because I really this is one of the interviews I really wanted to do. Now, our first interview ended up being Ross, right?
Yes.
And so
Yes.
back on episode 1, we had Ross, your brother.
Of course.
And naturally,
you're right.
you came up.
My brother.
You came up in the conversation because I asked him, I said, well, what's your first memory of basketball? And he said that you dragged him out to play. He didn't even want to play and he didn't really like it. So with that in mind, I have to ask, what are your first memories of basketball and who introduced you to the game? When did you start playing?
At Luxton School. The coach at that time was Jeff Spurl, a Brit who had no idea about basketball. The gym at Luxton, they actually got a new one, or they did some work on it, but it's still basically there. The keys actually touched the center line. So if
like
you were in the
foul line key.
That's right, the foul line, the top of it actually. And so if you were over the half court, you had to be careful you weren't going to get called for 3 in the key because there was no room. There were 2 keys and a center line. That's it. And then the ceiling was so low that in volleyball, if you served and you hit the ceiling, they gave you 1 reserve.
Wow.
And I started playing there in grade 9. I don't have much of a recollection about it, but the following year, I went to St. John's because I was at Luxton from K to 9. Went to St. John's and decided to try out for the freshman team. And the famous and notorious coach of the time, Russ Pastick, got his horns into me, and I was with him for 4 years. 1 JV, or freshman as it was called that way, and 3 varsity. And he said, how did you play 3 varsity? Well, I said, I flunked grade 12 and went back to school. And I was the first of the group, the MHSA, or the Manitoba Secondary Schools Athletic Association, allowed repeaters to play, as I had already decided.
That was you.
That was me, and a couple of other ones too. We were allowed to play because we had failed grade 12. Before that, they would say, oh, these losers, get rid of them. They're gone. Yeah. And so I was planning on going back to school because I didn't have my grade 12 diploma. And also then I had to, I was working, I was trying out for IPAC, coached by Martin Terry, who's another Hall of Fame member. And I was just a kid, really, just finished. I would be 18, I guess, and trying out with this team. And there was great guys on the team, fantastic guys that I had played a little bit with at St. John's, watched mostly because I was a rookie. Fred Pliskovich and guys like that, it was a fantastic team. But
sorry, was that a senior men's team?
It was a senior men's team. Okay, exactly. Yeah. And then halfway through the summer, I realized that, or someone told me that you're going back to school. Yes, but you can play now at school. So that was enough for IPAC. I now was back in school. and repeating grade 12.
That's so interesting.
Was an interesting thing for me. It was great for me when I thought about it. My mother wasn't too excited about that, but what can you do? I don't have a grade 12 diploma, so I had to go back to school and get that grade 12 diploma.
Well,
so,
exactly.
And I did very, very tough, because it was those days where they had the mystery exam. You didn't know what exam it would be when you walked in, of the four main courses: math, science, English, and whatever the other one was. And you walk in, and it's just like a surprise exam. Which one is it going to be this time? And everybody was sort of on pins and needles until they sat down. And it was crazy when they did that all the time. And then you also had to have a language. You had to have grade 12 French, or some language, mostly French, to be able to get into university. So when I finally graduated, I decided, well, what else am I going to do? So I went to the University of Manitoba in August of my second year, because I had to do a supplemental in French. I got it. And the end of August, I went to the University of Manitoba and applied and got in. I had thought these great thoughts of that I would be a great phys ed teacher. So I applied to get into phys ed and had an interview with Frank Kennedy. There's lots of Frank Kennedy's names all the way through the phys ed at the University of Manitoba. And he interviewed me, and he looked at my academic record, and this kid we don't need this kid. He just said, you're not in, go somewhere else. And so I went into arts and took courses that I'd never heard of before. And 3 years later, I have my degree. I never failed a course, and 90 credit hours completed, and played, lucky enough to get a chance to play with the University of Manitoba team.
Yeah. So did you just walk on the team at that time, or?
Well, there was only walk-ons. There was only walk-ons. There was no recruiting.
You didn't really get recruited back then? It was like, who's coming to school? Whoever comes to school, that's it?
No, there was no recruiting. You walk in the door. Bud Fraser was the coach my first year. And that's an interesting story, too, about the coaching list that went with the University of Manitoba. When I went there, the first year, I was JV and varsity. I played both. I played varsity at home, but on the road, I stayed home and played JV in the old senior. It was the junior league at that time, a very good league, a very, very good league. So I combined. It was John McDermott that was our coach at JV, and Bud Fraser, who was the coach of the varsity. And I never got any varsity games, but I still have a year of eligibility left. Kirby doesn't seem to be interested in me. I don't know why. And then, I hung in there. Then the second year, Lloyd Hishka, who was the high school coach, because Bud Fraser moved on to Ottawa, I think. And then they hired Lloyd Hishka, who was the coach at Dakota, who had very successful time there. He became the head coach at the University of Manitoba. And again, so we got a new coach again, and we work it through. We were okay as a team. We were lousy in terms of playing. We ended up 1-19 was our record.
Wow.
And the one game we won was the last game of the season, which meant nothing. But to us, we threw the coach in the shower. And I'm not sure we threw him in the shower because we didn't like him at all. Or we threw him in the shower because we have a win.
Wow.
And ironies of ironies, the team we beat was the number one team, probably number one in the country, I think. And they had a player, their top player was Darwin Samodiak, who was their gold medalist in phys ed. He had finished his master's. And so they fire Hishka, not because of that, and they hire Darwin. So our new coach, this is our third coach in 3 years, they hire Darwin Samodiak. And he's younger than guys on the team.
Wow.
But what a difference. A total great teacher, a great coach, a great friend, went on to do great things at the University of Western Ontario. He only stayed at the University of Manitoba for 1 year and went to Ohio State to finish his PhD.
Oh, wow.
I think he was just beyond what coaching a men's team at basketball at University of Manitoba. Then we have another coach, five coaches in 4 years. They try to find somebody who's going to do this. And nobody seems to want to do it. I wonder why. And so Jack Lewis was teaching in the education faculty at that time. And for some strange reason, they contacted him and said, Jack, find us a coach. And Jack tried to find us a coach, for the University of Manitoba a coach. And he came back and said, I can't find anybody who wants to do it. And they said to Jack, you want to do it? And Jack said, okay.
Wow.
So Jack, his first year was my last year at the University of Manitoba. And Irv Hannick and I graduated that year. So, and then from there, the program just blew up, just probably because they got rid of Irvin I. 1971, they go all the way to the national championship and get pummeled by Acadia in the final at Acadia.
Yeah,
they had
wow.
the championship was at Acadia, and they lost in 1976. They win the national championship.
Yeah, of course.
But after Jack has stepped down and Don Hunter's coaching it, so really from those dismal days in the late 60s and early 70s, where you 1 win and 19 losses is your record for the year, to finalist in the national championship and actually winning the national championship within the next 5 years, I think is a tremendous accomplishment. And it speaks well, and many of the people from the 76 team. They are just quality guys, and they've done great things for basketball in Manitoba.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, and it's interesting because, you pointing out, all the transition in different coaches and things like that, it does speak very, very fondly of mentors, champions, I like to call them, right? People who step in and do a good job, right?
Yeah.
People who care. And like, obviously, like, we're having this conversation because you were one of those people. But early in your career, when you were, just learning how to be a player, learning how to be a coach, you must have had some mentors, some people that you looked up to, some people that really helped you out, kind of guiding you. I know you had mentioned some early people when you first started playing, but maybe you can talk about some of those people who were instrumental in your maybe playing, and probably more importantly in your coaching, those early years in your coaching that really helped guide you and bring you along.
Well, probably the most important one, I get a tremendous amount of mentoring and support from my brother, as we were together all the time. We were teammates at St. John's, and we were teammates and at the University of Manitoba. So obviously he has been and continues to be a tremendous factor in just anything that I do. And later on after that, there was those years at the University of Manitoba, I think there was not a lot of mentoring because I wasn't the great player. My brother was the great player. I've often said that at the beginning of the year, when they decide the team, I would go to the coach. This is not true, but I'll say it anyways. I would go to the coach and say, if you cut me, I'm taking my brother with me. And when I went to play with St. Andrews after, and that didn't work out for me because I was coaching at St. John's. I was going to school to get my B.Ed. I was doing this. I had twin boys, Adam and Sean. And so there was no time to play. But there was the first practice, and Fred Ingleson was the head coach with Jimmy Bullock, and they were handing out the uniforms. And I said before going to the session, if there's a uniform that says Wedlake, I'm in trouble, because it's not going to be me. If it says R Wedlake, I got a shot. Guess what?
Yes.
It just said Wedlake, so I was gone.
That was it.
Like, all those experiences of guys from all the way through you. There's no real tremendous one person. Jack Donohue had a tremendous influence on me. Tom Nasalki, when we worked together with the Winnipeg Thunder, I learned tremendous amounts from him, from Darwin Samodiak, from Vic Pruden, from Bruce Enns. All those guys had tremendous influence on me as a coach. And I spent a lot of time in coaching clinics throughout North America. Attended 25 to 30 coaching clinics, and learned lots from a lot of great coaches. So I've never been shy about saying I didn't invent anything. I stole everything. Because some guy has a great idea. Why do I have to invent a great idea? I'll steal that idea. And I've learned that you can have success that way.
That's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. So you had mentioned Ross, and you guys play together. So in his podcast, and I've had many conversations with Ross about this, because I just can't, I love hearing about this. So I need you to confirm, or you need to tell me, is Ross, just making it sound crazier than it actually was. So he explains to me that back when, you guys were playing at the University of Manitoba, that one, you weren't allowed to drink water on the bench, that you guys were given salt tablets, and the only thing you were allowed to have for pregame meals was just a big steak. Is that all? Yes. Is all of that true? And what do you remember about that?
That's true. There was a lot of strange things about that they did. Like, there was stretching was becoming popular, and then people just say, but it's a stretching thing, don't do that. You're going to hurt yourself, and so many other things that have changed over time. And even when I was coaching at St. John's, the early parts, the guys that I coached in those early years, 1968, 69, still laugh at the fact that I wouldn't allow water on the bench.
Oh, so you took this forward, and you're like,
yeah, nope. Because that's what happened with me. And
when did you start to allow? I have to know. Like,
when
you
I
must
learned
have gotten
something.
Trouble. Well, I'm sure the people at the school were like, hey, like, you got to give them water. Like, the
people at the school didn't care.
No, they didn't care.
No. And because the reason for it was that the substitutes would sit there on the bench and they drink water. And then I need somebody to go in there, and they got this big bloated stomach, and they burp, and they just consume. They've been sitting there consuming water for 45 minutes, and now they can't play. That's not true, but that's what I said was the reason that we didn't allow water on the bench. But I gave up on that. Once you learn something, and nobody at the school could care less. They wasn't hurting them.
They didn't really care.
No, they didn't care.
Well,
so there's lots of those situations.
Those kind of things blow me away, just because, again, it's not surprising, because of course, things change throughout the years. But when he first told me that, I was blown away. Now, the interesting thing about that is the salt tablets, they weren't far off, because we know that salt is a key, Gatorade, right? We know that that's a key element of being hydrated, right? Exactly. Sure. So they weren't off on some of this stuff, but to say no water, now it's like, okay. And then Ross went on to say that after the game, they would bring in the cases of Pepsi and whatnots, and you're not drinking water after, you're having a beer or some Pepsi or whatever. So you haven't drinking water all game, and then it's you might have a game tomorrow, and all you've had is salt tablet, beer, Pepsi, and
nobody thought about that. Nobody thought about that, because there was nothing to measure that against.
Of course.
That's just the way things are done.
Of course.
Yes.
So in this vein here, I got to kind of ask you this question now.
Sure.
So we're way back in your story. We've, kind of talked about salt tablet. Things have changed throughout the years, but over the last whatever amount of years, we're going back all the way to, like, say, when you started at St. John's, for you're in 68 up until, when you stepped away from the game. I know you're still, we're involved with the MCAC, but up until now, I guess, what are some of the biggest changes that you can note both on and off the court? Because, again, we've mentioned some of them. Hey, just the way stretching, salt tablets, pregame meals, all that. But you coach at the university level. You were very knowledgeable. You always seeked out knowledge. So, what were some of those? You can just talk about some of the changes you've noticed, the bigger changes.
At the University of Winnipeg, I learned a lot from Cal Botterill. There was a guy that really was a mentor, and he was at the University of Winnipeg. His office was just next door to I am, and I learned tremendous about so many conditioning, about psychological things, preparation, organization, all those kind of things from him. And I had a base, but I learned so much more from him. And so it helped me change. I think I changed with it. I did, whether or not it's the last few years that I coached, I don't know if I could coach in today's game. It's a little beyond me in many ways. First of all, I would have trouble with the freedom the players have to fire this thing up. I may not want to do that. I'm more like Dale Bradshaw and I are probably closer to that kind of thing, where we like to have some kind of semblance of order.
Yeah.
And so, but again, it's probably a very boring basketball that we coached in many ways, and it changed over time. Obviously, you learn and you learn and you learn. And I've been wide open to anything new, just totally. And I think I've changed a lot. But I look at the game today, I don't know if I could have changed this much. As to the way it's played today. But I really respect it. And I think the changes that have happened to the game have made it more exciting. And you look at the impact that it's had globally, I think that's probably the good thing. So I bite my lip and just, I'll go along with it and let them fire it up.
Well, it's interesting, because if you think back of some of the players that you coached at the University of Winnipeg, some super talented players. And again, I know, if you're shooting more and the pace is higher and the shot clock's shorter, the stats are going to look better. But there's also that level of if you just let them let them go and just let them do their own thing. You coach some players that in that today's game, they would have been spectacular.
Oh, I think they would have been
absolutely spectacular.
Yes,
it could have been. Yeah, you know what I mean. So I don't know if it's because I played with some of the guys when I was a little younger and they were a little older, but spectacular talents, the guys who can just really play, and they were versatile guy that could put them all over the court, could shoot, can ball handle. And I think later on in their senior men's years, they maybe got to stretch that out a little bit, because now they're I'm just going to do whatever I want, Well,
there's certain guys that I coached. You may know them. I think Rob Dirksen, I think Scott Anderson are two good examples of the best thing that I could have done is leave them alone.
There you go. Yes. Because I was thinking about Scott Anderson too.
Exactly. What a talent he is. A tremendous talent, and more talented. I think I probably did him a disservice coaching him at the University of Winnipeg. He was still great, but I looked at him after the shackles were taken off. Same with Rob Dirksen. Unbelievable talents. And I feel, gee, what did I do to this poor kid? But just great in terms of seeing what the progress that they made. And part of it was probably they matured a little bit more, and they understood the game a little bit more. But they became very talented senior men's players. For sure.
And I think that it's funny. I was thinking about Scott Anderson because he's just phenomenally talented. Right? He's great size, could shoot. He's kind of like a small forward, post up, kind of do everything. But I think when we talk about the game changing, I think players like that excel, but then there's other players who in the older era, they really need the structure, right? So there's different types of players. And now I think in today's age, you're going to find that the players who are more like the stars are really going to flourish in just open systems, where in the past you may have seen like a player could be a star and flourish in a very controlled system, so it's not as much that kind of mentality there. The focus or philosophy has changed so much in the game. It's an interesting.
It is. But again, it's the way the game has grown in the last 10 to 15 years is unbelievable. I think it's become much more fan friendly.
For sure.
And people you can see really get excited, where some of those 47, 45 games of the old high school days, they aren't that exciting.
A little different. I wanted to talk a little bit about the WIT and the Westman Classic. So like those are two mega basketball events. I mean, even when I was in high school, I graduated in 2001, and back then those were still massive events. Those were super important events for a high school, and then obviously played in the Westman Classic in high school and as well in college. So you were super important, but the question I want to ask you around that is, why are these types of events so important for the community as a whole? Like, why did you feel that, hey, we have to make these, like, for example, the WIT, or making the Westman Classic such a big event, right? Like we had JV, we had all these teams playing. So why did you find them to be so important, and why did you want to continue to grow them?
Well, because the basketball needs to be part of the community. And I thought that the actual high school season was so small, so short, and it's always been up against, you got to wait till the volleyball is over. And then all of a sudden you play a week or two, and then Christmas comes in, and then you take and you hit the end of January, and there's exams in there. So that you close down for that. And then you're up against the Easter, and that's the season. So it's a couple of small chunks. I wanted to do much more. And the WIT is a good example, because Clyde Perry was the principal at TechVoc at the time, which is another guy who's had a lot of influence on me, not from a basketball perspective, but just life. And he wanted to use TechVoc, the gym where we started off, as a real positive thing for TechVoc. He was feeling that the school needed something to really take ownership of and do a good job with. And he started it, and I jumped on board with him. And Brownie Bradshaw was another one that was involved right from the beginning. And we got this thing going, and it became bigger and bigger every year. As a matter of fact, the year that we didn't win the provincials, that'd be 1979, to show the impact on the game, is that we were in the WIT, and the 3 games we won it. The 3 games we beat were all out-of-town teams. There was Runnymede High School from Toronto, there was Bell High School from Ottawa, and there was a high school team from Calgary. And so in 3 consecutive nights, we beat that. Those are top teams in the country. And I remember the names of the players in there. Most of them ended up going D1.
Wow.
And yet here's St. John's High School beating them.
Wow.
That's with guys awesome. Like Jan Bujan and Tim Ferguson, Jerry Haynes, and Lance Rosolowicz from the North End. We beat them 3 straight.
Awesome.
And we went to Luther and won that. We won the Westman Classic. And everything seemed to be falling into place. And then we got upset in the semifinals of the provincial championship, and ended up, we were 32-2 going into the provincials and didn't win.
Wow.
We got upset, and it was interesting. And this is not a negative comment, but Dakota beat us. Dale Bradshaw and his team. And they held the ball against us. There was no shot clock in those days.
I know.
And so he had Wayne Harder and Gary Sherman, 6'8" guys that played the high post and just played catch.
Wow.
And worked the clock down. I think it was something like 35-34, something like in the provincial championship. And hey, I had no idea what to do. I was beside myself. And all those winnings all the year for the rest of the earlier part of the year didn't mean anything. It's all of a sudden you lose the provincial championship, and I feel that was directly my fault.
Yeah,
we just didn't prepare ourselves. Probably we were surprised as to how the game was going to go, but I didn't really know how to deal with that kind of stuff when they have two big 6'8" guys and they just play catch with the ball.
Yeah, what are you going to do with that? So then there was it the following year that you guys won then?
No, the previous year we won.
It was the previous. Okay, this was the year after.
We were 8th. This was the year after. We were seeded 8th the year that we won. It almost says that finishing back in the thing and be the underdog is probably where you want to be. But when you're the favorite, boy, the pressure's on. For sure.
You know, and so you had mentioned kind of the wit and the reason why you did some of those events and why they were so important. But I think that speaks to, because when again, speaking from my own personal experience and, you know, obviously coaching later, is those events and those tournaments became bigger than regular season games.
Oh yeah.
Like those were their mega events, and people would, you know, from all over the city, and like, again, you know, the WIT and the Westman Classic, people came out and watched those. And sometimes that was the only time they got to really see some of these teams play, because, you know, whatever, like those regular season high school games are on the weeknights.
I know.
So you get these things and they're big time. But I want to talk about the Westman Classic a little bit, because obviously you were around for years of that.
Yeah.
And you know, grew it to a much larger event than it started off. I just kind of want to know, like, what are some of your most fond Westman Classic memories, either as an organizer of the event, or growing the event, or, you know, more importantly, as a coach? When you think Westman Classic, what stands out to you?
Well, the first time we won it, I was coaching at the university, that was about 1987, something like that. We won it. That I still don't know if the date's correct, but you work so hard on the tournament. Sometimes you maybe let your team down by not spending enough time with them. You know, the organization of the thing, as there were years in there, we had over 100 teams in the tournament.
Yeah,
we had International Classic, we had the JV Classic, we had the Junior High Classic, we had the Winnipeg Minor Classic, we had girls, and we had women, we had everything. If you wanted to play basketball, we'll create a tournament for you. And there was a couple of years there was over 100 teams in the tournament, and it was a natural, because it was great for the University of Winnipeg. But there's that gap in there. We talked about this already, that the school ends about the mid-December and doesn't start till maybe mid-January.
Exactly.
And what are you going to do in between there? You're not going to practice, and sometimes you can't even practice because your gym is closed.
Yeah.
So hey, come to the Westman Classic. Come to the Westman Classic, and we would say to people, and if you come to Winnipeg and you lived in Winnipeg in the past, but you come back for Christmas and you want to meet your friends, you don't have to phone them. Come to the Westman Classic. They'll be there. Yeah. And it's true. Come to the Westman Classic. See your friends, because you'll walk in the door. Oh, hi.
Absolutely.
Great places. And that's sold out the place.
Yeah.
Like the high school championship oftentimes drew more than the university championship.
Yeah, it was massive. I remember this is I've fond memories of you know, playing in those tournaments.
It's sad that that's not continuing on, because there's that gap in there. You know, and there's lots of reasons for that, but I feel very sad the fact that those kind of things aren't happening still, and we provide opportunities for everyone to play. It becomes sort of I don't know what the reasons for it, but it's certainly you lose a lot when you don't have that kind of atmosphere around the game, not just the game itself, but the atmosphere around the game.
Absolutely. No, that's true. Sure. So, okay. Well, you did, I actually have to pull this out of you though, but you mentioned do you remember who you played when you won your first Westman Classic? And also how many times did you guys win it? You remember?
There was quite a few, because there's some of that previous, when Bruce Enns coached, that was winning there, and with Vic Pruden coach, because
when you were there specifically though.
Oh, gee, that's a good question.
This is a tough tournament. Sure. You guys are inviting top talent. Like there was always like top 10 teams from the United States. Like it was a loaded tournament.
Yeah, it's loaded, is right. But I'd say 3. Take a stab at 3.
And the first team, the first one was against Calgary.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But we also lost some. I didn't think we should lose, but when it's your tournament and you create the draw, I shouldn't say this, because I used to tell people, we draw out of a hat, you know. You have no idea who you're going to play. And then the question, but it's my hat.
Yes, exactly.
And so if you can't do well in your tournament when you make the draw, that's not a good thing. That's not a good thing. You've done something wrong.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's true. That is true. The one thing I do remember about seeing this on the draw all the time, and you can correct me if I'm completely wrong on this, however, is, on the same side, hopefully whether Westman won their first game or the Bisons won their first game, you'd play in that semifinal game at 6:00 or 8, whatever. Or if you guys both in either case, that game is going to be a game where if both teams lose or both teams win, they're going to play each other because
that was part of the draw, making
by design.
That was going to happen. They get a tough game. We get a not as tough a game.
Yeah.
Then we meet in the semifinals and the place is packed.
Exactly.
And we give the fans what they want.
Exactly.
And that's when, and it sounds crass maybe, that's when you can make money.
Of course. Well, of course. But this is why, I said event, right? I didn't say tournament. It's an event. You'd mention all teams. At some point, these events, especially ones like Western Class, like you want to make money for the program. You want to build prestige and you want to do all that stuff as well. But you want to bring money. You don't want to, hey, we ordered this prestige, but it was free. The tickets were free and it was full, but we lost money. You never want that. So,
and if there's a choice between making money and not having any fans there, I'd rather have fans before the money.
Of course.
And there's different ways to make money than just the ticket at the door.
Of course, absolutely.
We were fortunate in those days because we would sell. We had merchandise, we had the shop, we had the concessions that we controlled, and so there was many different ways of being able to make sure at least you cover the expenses.
For sure.
But the key is you want the place packed.
Yep,
you want the place packed.
Absolutely.
Yeah, nothing worse than playing in front of it. It was packed. It was
packed. Yeah, it was absolutely packed. Yeah. No, that's why I say that was not my. I played at University of Manitoba. That was not my home gym. I obviously played.
We know you played at University of Manitoba. Yes, you do.
but my point. Well, we both did. We're both alumni. But it's interesting though, just because my most fond memories are in that gym. Some of my biggest games were in that gym. It speaks to the atmosphere that you're talking about that was kind of created in that gym, right? Like, again, no offense to the new IGAC Center that was new at the time. It's not like a comfortable place to play basketball. Let's be honest, right? Where the Duckworth Center at the time was wonderful, and then. You guys did such a good job of, like you said, with the branding and the merchandise. You could smell the popcorn, like I remember these things. Like I vividly remember the lighting was wonderful. So you guys did a wonderful job there. And, I'm in the event space now, so I even appreciate these things even more than I did then. But the fact that I remember them, shows how special these events are. So
that year that we were 1-19, when I played with the University of Manitoba, a learning experience. We toured the northern part of the United States with our team. Yeah, we played at Bethel College in Minneapolis. We played Sioux Falls, University of South Dakota in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and Yankton College in Yankton, South Dakota was the three. Why we went to those things, we were embarrassed. We were totally embarrassed. But I remember in Sioux Falls, and I still have the recollection of that. We came out onto the court to start the game, and there was popcorn in the air. There was a smell of popcorn throughout the whole place. And I'm like, wow, this is great. They actually have a concession. They sell popcorn. And then the broadcast team comes over and want to interview our coach. And they interview our coach right in front of the bench. And they say, well, coach, what do you think? What's your team? Blah, blah, blah. I'm saying, this is on radio. Wow, this is great. Nothing like that happened in Winnipeg. There was no popcorn smell. There was no games on radio.
Yeah.
But hey, maybe we could do that.
So are you essentially, some of these things stuck with you?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Once you're like,
I still remember that. You walked out on the court. I wasn't going to play a whole lot, but I walked out on the court and it was like, the place was packed too in South Dakota, in Sioux Falls. The place was packed. And we were obviously the sacrificial lamb.
Yes, of course.
Yes, And so they pummeled us. They pummeled us and the fans loved it. And even we go to play Yankton the next night and they pummeled us too. And you're sort of, well, what can you do? And then the next day we find out that they set an all-time record for most points scored in a game. Thank you very much.
Wow.
Against us.
That's awesome.
We were lamb twice.
You guys got paid. I'm sure the program got paid to come down there. So that's used. No,
I don't know what the coach did. We were way over our heads. But that changed because then later on, we were just within 10, 15 years, the programs here were competitive, very competitive.
Absolutely. Yeah. There's definitely a shift there. Yeah. Well, I kind of want to take a shift here because I would be remiss if I didn't ask you about your time with the national team. Now,
sure.
Adam said, you have to ask him about the national team and you have to ask him about the fans. So, well, what about the fans? Like, just ask him about the fans. So, okay. So I'll lead with that. I'll let you tell us about the national team and tell us about the fans. I don't know what he was talking about, but
fans in other countries are a little different. You may know about that. But I was asked by Jack Donohue to work with him for the summer, because I said before, Steve Konchalski, his regular assistant, wasn't available. So that was fine. And I think I provided Jack a teaching situation. He's a great coach, absolutely the best game coach I've ever seen and worked with by far, but not that great in teaching the fundamentals and working with the different things that you have to do. So what I basically provided him was that I would take the first hour of practice and do all the things that you got to do, the repetitions, and do this, you do this. And then Jack would show up for the second half hour and do the coaching and the games and the scrimmages and all that kind of stuff. And I would sort of sit down and I did my job. And so that was good. I enjoyed that. The one that probably Adam was talking about was in Greece, in Athens, actually Piraeus, which is the suburb of Athens.
Okay.
The Stadium of Peace and Love.
This was the name of the stadium?
That's the name of the stadium. And we were playing the Greek national team. And they had a guy, Nikos Gallos, who played 4 years at Seton Hall, and he was god of basketball in Greece. And we were doing okay. The game was fairly close. I don't remember what the score was. Paul Johansson from UBC, who played for Bruce Enns there, who used to coach here, was guarding this Nikos Gallos, and he was guarding him tough. He was guarding him real tough. And they didn't like that a whole lot. And so as the game was going on, all of a sudden, one of the guys from their bench, a player, came from the bench and tackled Paul Johansson.
Whoa, hold on. So the game is happening and he leaves the bench.
And then the Greek bench, come off the bench and they start kicking Paul. He's on the ground. They're kicking him and they're kicking him. And it turns into, and our bench, we cleared the bench too. So it's a riot.
Wow.
In the middle of the game. And the game, when you in those stadiums, they allowed smoking. So there was this cone, there's this cloud of smoke just above the court. And it made this sort of an eerie look at everything, because they were smoking. They smoked a lot, I guess, the Greeks. And it was coming down and around, and here's everybody grabbing and pushing and fighting and everything. I grabbed Norman Clark and just tried to keep him out of it. And I grabbed one of our players because I wasn't going to go grab a player. He's going to kill me. But the interesting part was that the guy that came off the bench to start the whole thing, we watched the videotape when we got back to the hotel. He did it, and then everything broke loose. It went absolutely crazy in there, and he hid behind the basket on one end.
No.
Yes.
So he did that, and then he ran away and hid.
He ran away and hid behind the thing.
Wow.
And the crowd got really upset with us. And the drachma, which is the coin they had there, they pelt us with drachmas. These coins are coming down. They're about the size of a loonie.
So this is like you're still on the court, or you're exiting the court now?
Yes.
You're on the court and they're throwing stuff at you.
And they're throwing stuff at us.
Wow.
The game, I think the game was finished. I'm not sure what the situation was finished. I don't have a recollection of that. But we left the thing and we got into our bus, and outside, they're rocking the bus, the fans and everything like this. And we just get away from there as quickly as possible. Wow. And it was scary. I can laugh about it now, but it was really, really scary. Yeah. And this was maybe the international basketball in those days. It got a little crazy, and fans got involved far too much. And we also played in Israel, and we won the gold medal in the high pole games, and that was a very positive experience. We beat the Israeli national team in the final. We had a great team both places. We had Jay Triano, we had Eli Pasquale, we had Carl Tilleman, we had Barry Munger. We had a lot of guys who went on to do great things in basketball. It was a great team, and great for me to have a chance to work with all these guys. But they excelled in those, even though we had trouble sometimes with the Greek fans.
Wow.
We did quite well. And Jay was the key of those, and we won the game in the gold medal game in downtown Tel Aviv in their big stadium there, defeating the Israeli team, and that was great. And the high pole games are a multi-sport event. It's like it's almost similar to our Pan American games.
Yeah.
And so basketball was only one component, and they paraded us all into the outdoor stadium and a big, huge, and all the teams from all the different sports from the different countries. That was an experience. Wow.
Yeah.
Downtown Tel Aviv. Yeah. And we toured. The tournament was spread out throughout Israel. So we played in Tel Aviv, we played in Jerusalem, we played in Bethlehem, we played in Haifa, we played up on the Sea of Galilee at a stadium there. So we were moving around and saw a lot of Israel at the same time. So it was a really great experience, right? And Jack was phenomenal. Even the one in Greece, it happened when we played the Yugoslavian team. And I can't remember the guy that played for Yugoslavia. He was in the NBA for quite a while. He died in a car accident. And he was one of the top.
Yeah, that's oh my goodness, I'm totally forgetting his name. Yeah.
He was it. He played for Yugoslavia, and he was great.
Yes,
a great guy. But the referees, Jack thought the referees were really bad. I learned to block out, the step in and get your hands up like this on my coach.
Yeah, I feel like blocking up because he's trying
to get at the referees. So he's reached over top of me and everything like that. So there was one of the games there where we just said, Jack said, we're not going back out for the second half.
Really?
And so negotiations started. So he went somewhere and they negotiated, and we sat in there for a good 25, 30 minutes until he came back, and we settled the problem, and we will continue to play the game.
Wow. Wow. It's just a different time.
Jack is an international coach. Like and he's just from New York. He has the power to be able to do that, or just did it. And people just sort of, what are they going to do? They want the game to continue. We're not playing until the referees change.
Yeah. Smarten up. Wow. That's amazing. Yeah. Wow. So I got a couple of questions from our audience. So this is going to be from the audience section. They this is something we did. It's new. I just threw it out there, and we got a few questions. So
sure.
First question is, what inspired the basketball skills show that you did?
Well, again, I wanted to give back to the game. I wanted to have places where people could go and learn about it. And if you didn't go to a coaching clinic in those days, it was very difficult to learn about the game. So I actually, 12 years, we were on Videon, that later became Shaw, and had that Westman Basketball, it was called. And there was sections of it that were talked about, almost like what you're doing here. We talked about the history of basketball in Manitoba. I had guests on. They talked about their impact on the game. I remember Bob Town, who played in the 76 Olympics in Montreal. You talked to him, and lots of other guys, interesting things. Plus, I also had a thing called Tips on Technique, which is still available on YouTube. Adams actually showed me where it's there, where I would take a skill and teach the skill to players. So some of the guys like Kirby Shep is in a lot of them as a player, learning. I think Grant Richter was made a player. He's my assistant coach. He's in a lot of those ones. And so it would go for maybe 15 minutes, and it was a part of the show, Tips on Technique. And if you want to look at it, it's on YouTube.
Yeah, definitely. If people listen, go check that out. I'm going to go check it out. I believe Adam maybe showed me one time, like when I was in the office, but yeah, no, that's but like, did you, similar to the when you had said when you were playing down in South Dakota, I smell the popcorn. I do that. And you ended up replicating a lot of these stuff. At University of Winnipeg. Was this something that you saw elsewhere? And you're like, hey, like you said, you said, I copy things. Now, why would I recreate things? Did you like, hey, this person has a show, or was this something that just, you're like, hey, I have an idea.
Let's do it. Yeah. I don't think there was anything like that in the country. As a matter of fact, we won a Blizzard award one of those years, which is for the homegrown cable companies. Show.
Way.
Yes. But those
awesome.
were the days that when it was Videon.
Yes.
There was Math with Marty, and there was the Cosmopolitans, these two women that played.
Yes.
And there was a bunch of shows. And how we got onto it was we would meet. There would be a night where you had to phone in and see if you could actually get a spot for a show. And so I took the team to the Duckworth, and I had at least 10 guys on phones. And they were all dialing in until somebody got an answer, Coach, over here. And I run down and I take it. Yes, we'd like to do the Westman Basketball show on video. And we got on. But that's the only way you could. Maybe that's rigging the election. I don't know.
Hey, whatever. That said, it wasn't against the rules. So
no, it wasn't. But it was interesting because when I went to the studio, which was on Stafford and Pemmican Highway there, it was down in one of the basements of one of the places, and they would go in. And they would set it up. This is much like we did this morning. They would set it up. They had the camera. It was a stationary camera. I would bring the sets. I would set up the sets. I would have this. I would have that. The script. I would actually had highlights that I had made of the previous game. So we would use that and everything like this. And they would have that ready to go. And then they would leave. They left me in the studio all by myself. And so I had a half an hour of time where I could have said anything I want. And when it was all said and done, you get the box out, you pack up all your stuff, and you're gone.
So that's interesting. Yeah, that's and I guess other people did the same thing. They would come and use the studio, take their stuff, and then leave. It's all
exactly.
the one studio.
It was just a video. There was no staff, or there was no. But later on, when we moved on, Colleen Oxness, who still works with in the television business here in Winnipeg, she became the producer of the show. And that's when the quality of the program really picked up. The tips on technique came that she would come to the Duckworth and have the cameras there.
Yes.
And I would be connected in, and I would say, today we're going to look at how to shoot a free throw, and we would go over that. Or the other thing is how to break a full court press. So we'd do that. And she would be there with the camera. So she was great, absolutely great as the producer of the show. So it came a long way from a one-man in the basement of a place just on Stafford and Pembina Highway.
No kidding. That's awesome. I love hearing those stories. It's like, why? Okay, well, one more question here from the audience.
Sure.
This is going back to your college days as a college coach, university coach. We want to know how you evaluate high school talent. So you're looking at a player to recruit them. What are some of the things? Again, obviously they're good, but maybe some of those other intangibles or other skills that you looked for in a high school talent.
Well, they have to be academically eligible, first of all, that they can actually get into the University of Winnipeg.
True.
And whatever university they're going to, and I would get to know them. I would visit their home. I would talk to their parents, making sure they understood the commitment that's expected and the actual monies that are involved, because in many of those years that might have been $1,000 scholarship, different than today, where they can cover the tuition, and even some places they can do more than that in the United States, obviously. So making sure that I would spend a lot of time at their high school games, watching them play, watching how they react, what their skills are, and where they could fit into our program. So I get to know them very well. Now, that was great when you were predominantly local talent. And we were predominantly local talent for the biggest time there, as I think most universities were across. But it's changed now because it's an international group you really have. So you may not be able to do all these things. But I get a pretty good feel for it. And you talk to a lot of people. You talk to their coach. You talk to people that coached it in the past, what kind of a person. And Jack Donohue said to me, recruit good people and teach them how to play. That's his advice to me. Never mind, look for the great players, because sometimes the great players aren't necessarily the ones that are going to help you. They may have other challenges. So recruit good people and teach them how to play. And so, hey, I tried to do that. I think we take certain players who were okay high school players, but turned into be very, very good university players and even professional players later as they matured physically and mentally. And I think we just helped them along the way.
Absolutely. I like that. Okay, we're getting into the end of close to the end of the interview. I have about 3 more questions. So
can I tell you a recruiting story?
I would love to hear a recruiting story.
Hey, this is I've never told. I just told this to Adam the other day. And
let's hear it.
Wow. Well, we had a good connection. Ross especially had a connection in North Dakota, and I spent a fair bit of time in North Dakota. David Corpella, that was one of the best point guards I coached, was from Milwaukee and played at Devil's Lake Junior College in Devil's Lake, North Dakota. So I was there was a great player at Grafton, and on the high school team there. Ross had seen him play when they were playing down there in a tournament, and I contacted the coach at Grafton and said, "Can I have a chance to talk with this kid? He's 6'8". He a very, very good player, high school player. And so he said, sure, come on down. So I drove down after practice to Grafton, and he set me up with the player in a classroom. And so he came in, "Hi, how are you? Nice to meet you. Thanks for spending some time. I want to talk to you about coming to school in Canada." And so we started our conversation. Well, it was a very good conversation. And I had a bag with me, and I was going to leave with him information about the university, as I always did there. So there's the timetable, here's the calendar, all this kind of stuff about Winnipeg, about the thing. And as we got towards the end of it, and we're trying to finish up with him, I said, "I've got this stuff I want to leave with you." And I reached in my bag, and what I had done in such a rush is that I had left the University of Winnipeg, and we had some kind of a fundraiser on the day before. And so I had this bag, and it had all this money in it. And so I reach in to get the information for the player, and I hand it to him, and all the money goes all over the floor. He looks at me. He looks at me like, what the is this?
Like you're offering him some cash.
And it was Canadian money too, so he didn't know what this was.
Yeah, he probably thought it was Monopoly money.
Whatever. So it was just, I'm sure he put it in the bag and everything. Sorry about that. And just that's the end of the thing. Obviously, he didn't come to the University of Winnipeg. He went to UND and was a top player there. One of the top players at UND after that. But I'm sure he's never forgot the high school coach from Canada who threw money at me.
Wow. Yeah, that's hilarious just because, like it almost seems like, obviously we know the story if you're telling it, but it would be like, I'm just, casually bringing this up and the money flies everywhere. And you're like, I don't know where this money came from. It's almost like, and he's looking at you like.
He would go and tell his teammates, I was being recruited by this guy, and all of a sudden he'd throw money on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
What am I supposed to do?
Don't mind that. I'm just putting it back in the bag. You're insinuating that there's going to be a lot more of that if you come.
Yeah, something.
Like, it didn't work. It clearly didn't work. So
it didn't work. No, we didn't get him. But that was one of those funny stories that didn't intend to be funny. Today is funny.
Yeah.
Today is funny.
So I'm curious to ask, like, I mean, obviously, you went down and talked to this athlete in the United States. Again, I don't know all the players you coached. Did you coach a lot of players that came up from the States?
There was 3 from there.
Okay.
From there, David Carpella was definitely the best by far, because I was down there. I used to go there to the Class B championships in the small towns, where the whole town comes out. It used to be such an atmosphere. You go to Langdon, you go to Grafton, you go to Devil's Lake, you go Williston, all those different places, and just watch the Class B championship. And when I went there to Devil's Lake to watch the championships, I just sat down and I sat beside this guy, and we just started talking. And it turns out that he was the head coach at Devil's Lake, their junior college there.
Yeah.
And so he said, I've got a guy, he's played 2 years with us already. I've got a guy who can help you. And that was David. And so we followed up. And David was the guy that made Norm Fromell and Jeff Foreman the great players, because he was the point guard and gave the ball to them.
Yes.
He gave the
a
ball
nice
to them.
post entry, set them up.
But even create in the open court.
Yep.
In the open court, he could do things with the ball. And all of a sudden, Norm's got the ball in his hands and there's nobody around. And you just... He created so well and was an absolute phenomenal guy to coach. He couldn't make a free throw of his life depended on it. He left-handed. He tried to teach left-handers how to shoot free throws. Oh, gee, that's tough. That's tough. But great guy. He was from Milwaukee. He had been recruited from Milwaukee, Wauwatosa, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, to go to Devil's Lake, and then ran his 2 years there because it's only a 2-year school. Yeah. But even better than that, from a personal perspective, my son Sean was at Red River College, finished at Kildonan East, went to Red River College. It didn't work out in that first semester. I didn't know what he was going to do. I called Devil's Lake, the coach there that I knew very well, and I said, I'd like to have Sean come down and go to school there. And Sean went to school for 2 years at Devil's Lake.
That's cool.
And got his diploma, and worked with the team as sort of a manager, video guy, taking care of all this stuff like that.
That's cool.
So it turned out really good that way. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Interesting relationship. Okay, cool. Sorry, I would love to. I could just talk forever, but unfortunately, we can't do that. So I have to kind of like stick to the script a little bit. But
that's okay.
I'm sure you have plenty of things to do as well. So
no, not really.
So okay, the next question I have is essentially, what's your most memorable basketball story, moment? And you could say more than one. But what comes first, things that come to mind when I bring that up? Most memorable.
It's hard to say because there's been the whole 40 years have been so positive. There really has been. There's losses that are tough, but really, no, there's really nothing that stands above anything else. So many situations of where players receiving awards or moving on to different things, and even a family, whatever, those are all very positive things. And if I would hope that I would have a little bit of influence on that and maybe help some of those things happen. But really, winning the provincial championship, I know was the high school one was very important. We were 12 of those 16 years in the provincial championships. We only won it once. 12 of the 16. I was at St. John's. We qualified for the provincial championships.
Wow.
And then and at the University of Winnipeg, 6 of the 16 we made the final 8.
Yeah, like nationals.
In Halifax. It always was at Halifax in those days. Yeah. So those were all great memories. The fact that you get an opportunity, you go to a city like Halifax, and boy, what a great basketball town that is.
Yeah,
absolutely great basketball town. And then doing everything else, learning from Jack Donohue and doing that, working with the Winnipeg Thunder for CGOB with Les Lazarek. That was great. Tom Nasalki was the head coach then, and he had been NBA Coach of the Year a few years prior to that at Houston with the Houston Rockets.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and phenomenal. And so we went to the baseball game in Toronto with the Blue Jays at the baseball stadium, and neither one of us, we looked at each other. This is boring as hell. So we went and sat in the concessions and just talked. And like I would say things. I would say the players' names, and he would just say something about the player because he knew all the players. I would say Rick Barry. And he would go on and tell me all these stories about Rick Barry. I say Bill Walton, and he would tell me all the stories that he knew about Bill Walton.
That's so cool.
Because he coached all these guys. Phenomenal experiences in working with individuals. So those are all things there's so many memories like that.
Yeah,
even just the fact when I was inducted into the Manitoba Sport Hall of Fame and having my family there and talking about and the little time I had at the end there at the reception there about the impact of my mom and dad and my wife Ingrid and my sons Adam and Sean have had on me. And I'm going to get all choked up here. But without all those people, those are the memories that I have. The upbringing there, the supports that they gave me in good times and not so good times. Yeah, especially my mom and dad, how they were able to deal with Ross and I and my sister Joan and take us through some pretty tough times economically, and the extra work that they had to go, an extra shift, an extra job, all that kind of stuff. And it's what my dad taught us about sport and everything like that. It came from him because he was a great soccer player. He thought basketball was a girls' game.
You shouldn't be playing that game.
No, exactly. That's right. But because he was a soccer player, but I did play soccer too. I did play soccer. I was a goalkeeper in the Premier Division. In the early 1970s until soccer got crazy, like the thing in Athens too.
Yeah, and then you're like, okay, I'm done.
I don't need this. I'm done. This is bad. I've got a family. I've got a job. I don't need to be in a fight. Because soccer in those days at Alexander Park was a little crazy.
I can imagine. It's fun. It's interesting you mentioned the sport. I know you got a little choked up, and I don't want to. Maybe I do want to bring you back here, but I think these moments are super important. And I actually watched the clip where, and I'm wondering if you can remember the analogy. If you could say it on air, because I thought it was wonderful. And you said, I want to thank my team, and the team I want to thank is my family and friends.
That's the speech.
And you said I'm going to use basketball analogies here. And you had I don't remember how it all broke down. I remember you were a guard and your wife was the point guard, and
Ross was the big man. Ross was the big man inside.
Ross was the big man.
Adam and Sean were the wings.
Yep.
My dad was the coach. My mom was the general manager.
There you go. Yes. I love that. I was laughing the whole time. I'm like, this is
It
wonderful.
was true. Yeah. It was definitely true. And that's you got to. It's sort of sometimes you get wrapped up in your own what you did, and you were responsible for all these things, positive things. Well, maybe you were to a certain extent, but hey, you had a team behind you. It was a team. It was a team honor that day. We were honoring the team, and the team was my family.
Absolutely.
And hey, they're still, well, mom and dad aren't with us, but everybody else is there and, doing their thing and very positive. And the impact, Ross has still got a tremendous impact on the game. And so has Adam. Adam is unbelievable. I'm so proud of him and everything he's able to do at Basketball Manitoba. Man, I'm in awe of what he's able to do. And,
absolutely.
Especially from a technological standpoint.
Yeah. Well,
No,
yeah,
no, no. So all of those things are great memories, but there's
yeah,
just so many of them. And you just have to, oh, wow, I'm so
yeah.
lucky that way. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I appreciate that answer. It's great. The one thing I will say is I think you referenced yourself as a shooting guard that shot the ball a lot, something like that. It
Yes.
was
And
something
then didn't play much
and
defense,
didn't
but
play much D.
I always first when it was the interviews at the end. I was
Yes,
always
that's what it
first in
was.
the interviews because I would
Exactly.
do this. And as soon as the game is over, I run over and I'll talk to the press.
Exactly. Yeah, it was great. It was a great speech. I really
Uh,
enjoyed it. It was nice.
thanks a lot.
But I think the point you're making is that at the end of the day, basketball, pick whatever it is. I mean, it's the people, right?
Yeah.
And whether it's the
Yeah.
people you've coaching, the people
Yeah.
you've worked with, your family and support system. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. We're all kind of, you could take basketball, you could say hockey, you could say baseball, you could say whatever, music, and like there's always going to be this thing. And I think that's I don't know who said it. I believe it was Kirby. He's I think it was in his interview, and many people have said it in interviews afterwards, is that's what it's about first and foremost. Is the people, right? It's a people game, right? Basketball is something we do, but we're people. And so if you can tap into that, you're going to be able to get the best out of those people to play basketball in this sense or have a good experience.
Kirby's a great example. There's a guy that I cut from the University of Winnipeg and ends up an assistant coach with me. And now he's going to Egypt as
I know. I saw that. I saw that.
Wow. Yeah. I'm so proud of him. Like, he came a long way.
I know.
But there was the day that I let him go, he wasn't too happy with me.
Absolutely
but then,
not.
Less than a year later, he comes back. Hey, would you like to be an assistant coach? Because I saw him in my basketball class that I was teaching at the University of Winnipeg. I saw his ability to teach.
Yes.
It was phenomenal.
Yes.
Hey, this playing thing is a waste of time for you. You can coach. So I had him, and he was with me for 4 or 5 years at the University of Winnipeg, and then moved on to Manitoba and all these national things and all this kind of stuff, Egypt and everything. I'm so proud of him. And so many people like that. Yeah,
absolutely. Kirby's again, it's interesting. I wonder how much of being a good teacher is something you learn or it's innate, like it's just with you. It's probably a bit of both, but he has, he could teach you how to like unroll this tape here. And, that's perfect. Great. He's so sound and just getting through to you. You're saying it. Everyone said, his teaching is unbelievable. And then he's become quite the speaker as well,
coaching is teaching. Coaching is teaching. There's no difference. And the business world has decided they want to use the name coach too. So you see all this coaching that happens because the business, you can say, well, we don't coach. Now everything they do, they coach.
Exactly.
Because they understand there's more to it than just the dollar figures. You got to work with people, relationships, all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, exactly. I guess that gets back to my point, right? If you can understand that it's people first, they're gonna produce better results at the end of the day, right? If they feel comfortable and we have a great relationship, they trust you and they know that you trust them, and of course they're gonna produce better, right? So I think that's a huge part.
The bulk of friends outside of the family are guys that I played with at the University of Manitoba, and like Ken Kelsch is probably my longest friend since maybe age 3, and we're going to visit them tonight.
Wow!
And he was at the University of Manitoba, so that's basketball was the tie, and those old days at Luxton, the bulk of it was that outdoor court at Luxton. Of where the 5 of us, and we often time refer to ourselves as the clubhouse, but that would have been Jaime Fox, and my brother Ross, it was Irv Hannick, it was myself, and it was Ken Kelsch. The 5 of us played forever at this outdoor court, and it's still there today. As a matter of fact, Ross, from his grade 11 to 12 year, wore his Chuck Taylors right through till there was a hole in the sole of it, because he used to turn. He had a turnaround jump shot. And so the shoe was going this way. He wore that shoe through on the asphalt court there that summer.
No way.
Because grade 11, he was nothing. Grade 12, he was a provincial all-star.
Yes. Yeah. Wow.
One more story. But when they were in grade 11, I was in my year, grade 12, repeating grade 12. And our coach, Russ Pastic, that's another story. But they had never played before. Maybe Jaime had a bit. But they would sit at the end of the bench, and things weren't going well. And Russ had this thing of where he would look down the bench because he's looking for help. He's looking for the help. And Ross would bend with the person that was next to him so the coach couldn't see him and ask him to go in. So the next year, he's a provincial all-star.
Wow.
He would like this. The kid guy would just keep moving with the guy next to you, and maybe coach won't see us because I don't want to play.
Wow. That's a massive turnaround. Like that's
yeah.
I think he mentioned that.
And then the grade 12 year, and then he starts at the University of Manitoba with Lloyd Hishke as the coach.
Yeah.
And he still holds the record that year for the most fouls in a 20-game schedule. Because he had, I think it's about 90 fouls in a 20-game schedule. The max would have been 100. So I think he had 10 that he didn't. He had 90 fouls. I don't know if that's true or not, but we just
that's the rumor.
Because when we played at St. John's, it was a 2-3 zone. If we played the Celtics, they 2-3 zone every night, 2-3 zone.
Yeah.
And we had no idea how to play defense. We just stood there with our hands waving around. And so then he's starting for a university team the next year.
Wow. And then he's fouling everyone because he doesn't know how to play.
Yeah, because he learned quickly. He learned quickly. Wow. Then he was an All-Canadian.
That's
By the time his fifth year came around, he was an All-Canadian.
Yeah, that's
the success is unbelievable. Really. And it's attributed just to, supports around him, but him. He put time in. He put the time in that's necessary. Yeah. And that court's still there today. As a matter of fact, I think that's where Ross wants his final ashes to go.
No way.
Court. Yes.
Well, if they do that, they might have to rename the court. I mean,
there's nothing wrong with calling that the Ross Wedlake court. Not at all. It's still there today. As an outdoor court, it was one of the few.
Yeah.
In those days, we're talking in the 60s.
Yeah.
And in the late 50s, we're talking. There wasn't many outdoor courts.
So wait, hold on. So we had the indoor court, which was tiny. Was the outdoor court bigger than the indoor?
Oh yes, for sure.
Interesting.
Yes.
Huh.
But it was always, we shoveled it off. I remember November the 11th, which was coming up now, we would shovel the court off because there will always snow and we would play.
Wow. Interesting.
The five of us all went to University of Manitoba together.
Yeah.
The clubhouse.
That's what I mean. Like, I think it is about the people. It is about the people at the end of the day. I mean, I think that seems to be, again, across the board. You know, I mean, when we're younger, we don't necessarily realize that, but as we get older, we're like, yeah, this is what it's about, you know? And so, we're going to wrap up. You've given so much stories, all this stuff, but I do always ask a direct question about advice. So I'm going to ask it. And feel free to repeat something we've already said, but just so we can step away from this and people listening, young coaches, we do have a lot of, younger coaches that obviously would love to hear some advice from you. So again, essentially the question read is, what pieces of advice would you give to coaches who are, younger coaches who are, whether just they're getting in the game or they're new to the game, or whether they're, they've been in the game for a while, but they're coaching young adults. You have a room of them in front of you. You're giving a speech. Someone says, "Hey, coach, what advice would you give me? I've been coaching high school for 5, 6, 7 years now. Tell me what you've learned. What would you want them to walk out of that room understanding?" Well,
there's a lot of things, but just in a nutshell, what Jack Donohue said, recruit for your team, even in high school. Pick up the kids, recruit good people, and teach them how to play. That's your game.
Yeah.
Anybody can really coach a game, but can you teach? Can you take that hour that you have, 2 hours in a gymnasium, just you, the team, bunch of basketballs, no fans, no nothing, no referees, no nothing. Can you teach the game? And that's what you have to learn to do. You can't just open the gates and let them, back and forth, in and out. And I think sometimes that's what coaching degenerates to, is that you don't want to spend the time teaching the game. And then you have to. And then with that, then you're going to have to learn how to teach it. You're going to have to really get out there and do the kind of things that are necessary. Coaching clinics. There's so much on the web right now. Technology has got everything for you. Whatever you could do, going to practices, watching people coach, and learning that way. And then maybe the most important thing over time, stay in touch with the people that you touched. All those people in time. Morris Glimcher was there on my first team at St. John's High School as a manager, and we still are very, very close friends. And he went on. There's another guy who went on and MHSA and all this kind of stuff. But he was sitting there at courtside waiting for his friend Harvey. And I was the cocky guy out of college. Hey, I'm going to teach these guys some lessons. What are you doing here? Morris says, "I'm waiting for Harvey, my friend." Then and the next day he came back, and then he came back again. And I figured maybe I could use this kid. You want to be a manager of the team? Yes. And that was the start of that career.
Interesting.
I take responsibility for all those situations.
Yeah, I claim that. Yeah. You'd be nothing without me.
Yeah, no. In many cases, people are looking at me, who started this guy?
Yeah, exactly.
No, wow. We laugh about that. We laugh a lot about that. But that's, stay in touch with those people.
Yeah.
Because the relationship you develop as a coach, player, kind of stuff like that is as a strong bond. And you just don't want that to disappear after they move on. Stay with them. And they help you stay young. It's such a wonderful job. And it's such a wonderful job that way, is because every September you go back to where you're going to coach, and you're a year older, but the players are still the same age.
Yeah.
And so you're not hanging around with old people.
Yeah.
Are cranky, and they teach you all these wrong things, and they're moaning and crying about stuff. You're working with the same age all the time, be it high school, be it university.
Yes.
And and it keeps you young. And then with the other positive thing with Adam and Sean, my sons, it's one of the few jobs where you can take your sons to work all the time. So they were ball boys. I've got pictures of St. John's when we had the orange Chuck Taylors as a team. They were with us there. They were maybe 7 or 8 years of age. They come to practices, and because we always practice at night, never after school. And then I've had them stay managers, and Adam ended up as an assistant coach with me at the University of Winnipeg. And Sean, right through, stayed with the University of Winnipeg. He was doing our AV and all that kind of stuff. And shouldn't say this, but now he's a referee.
Yeah.
So hey, they're involved. But yeah, I could take my kids to work.
Yes.
All the time. And that's a great job when you can do that, as opposed to you got to go to work and the kids aren't allowed. You never see your kids because you're at work all the time. I saw them from ages whatever at work. Yeah, and they helped. Orange shirt, orange Chuck Taylors. Yeah. And they look as good as everybody else.
Yeah, no, I love that, because I tell people, and I see people who, people not necessarily, they might be high school coaches, they may just be playing, senior men's basketball, but they'll bring their kids.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Bring them out.
Sure.
Like, you're coaching, they can, and eventually as they get older, like you said, now they're helping out. Yeah. But you always have that connection, right? I think that's super important.
You got to and with everybody, you got to keep the connection open all the time.
Absolutely.
Because the fact that they still want to come and talk to you is a very positive thing. Obviously, you must have done a couple of things right.
Absolutely.
If they come over, Coach, how are you? And kind of stuff like that. To be very bad if they, here he is again, let's get out of here.
Yeah, they're like, oh, there's Coach, we got to run. Yeah. You do not want that. That means you're like,
no. Yeah. There's a great book by John Grisham called Bleachers.
Okay.
Normally he writes those mysteries, those lawyer kind of things, and everything. It's called Bleachers, and it's about a high school coach, football coach, who is dying, and the players all gather at the town where he coached and where they played, and they meet at the bleachers to talk about the impact that he had on them. Now eventually does die at the end, but it's interesting the impact that he had, and some of it positive and some of it not. And it's the kind of thing that you can say to someone, when you're finished coaching and they meet and talk about you as the coach, what are they going to say?
True.
What are they going to say about you? And hopefully it's going to be more positive than not. And you've had a tremendous impact. You may not have won all the things, but at least it was a positive impact. But if they're sitting there saying, I hope this old guy dies pretty quick, that's not good.
That's not a good thing.
That's not good. It's a great book called Bleachers.
Well, I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We'll end there. I appreciate this so much. It's always a pleasure to chat with you.
You're doing a great job. I hear very positive things about what's happening with it.
Yeah, well, like I said, I'm grateful. I don't take this position lightly. I get to interview. I've interviewed so many people that I would consider legends, and I get to sit down and talk for an hour, and I get to ask all the questions I would love to ask. So I appreciate you taking the time. And
you're welcome. I enjoyed it. It's always nice to think about the past. And give credit where credit is due for the numbers of people that I've come in contact with, my family and all these other coaches and players, to give credit where credit is due, because they certainly helped me a lot.
For sure. Absolutely. Thanks, Bill.
You're welcome.
Okay, take care.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this series. and reach out to us with your comments on the show. Thanks again for joining us.